Substack Live. I'm very excited.
So so honored. Well, y'all, this is another subtraction session. I'm Nell 3D, and as always, we're going to get into the challenge and opportunity of subtracting around some big themes. This is bias month. And so, yeah, it's going to be a good one. Deb Shine Valentine is my guest. She is a liberatory life coach, which I think everyone needs in their lives, and maybe especially white women these days, but we'll say more about why. And she's also the brilliant and really, I would say, generous author of Controversial Grace here on Substack. So thank you, Deb, for hanging out and being here for this subtraction session.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Mm. So tell us a little bit about what got you to being a liberatory life coach and maybe also what that means.
Sure. Yeah. So, what it means to me
Mm.
is that life coaching is a holistic space to be working in. So that's kind of a given. But I especially work with people who want both their own liberation and collective liberation. And so there's that where I'm always operating in that both and of holding what it is that you desire, what it is that you need as a client, the joy that you're looking for, the relief that you're looking for, all of those things, but holding that also within the context of larger issues of collective liberation that my clients also really desire to be a part of. Sometimes they're really a part of that work and they're getting burnt out. Other times they've kind of gotten frozen.
Mhm.
So people tend to come to me on one end or the other of that
Mm.
spectrum.
Yeah, really
And then,
beautiful.
so that was the why. And then how did I get to this work was the other part of the question. Let's see if I can tell the reasonably concise version of that. I started training as a coach when I was a tenure track professor, actually, after having had a career about 15 years in some combination of stay at home mom and working in early childhood education professionally, and some in elementary education. So I had been a classroom teacher, I'd been a childcare director. Childcare director is the hardest job that I ever had. That think it's one of the hardest jobs on the earth. So I just want to say that
Well,
if
good thing we pay them so well.
not wrong. Stay at home is also really, really hard.
They're another well-paid
Um,
profession.
yes, absolutely. So both of those took a lot out of me. But I had continued to want to be able to teach pre-service teachers. So
Mm.
at the age of 40, I went back and got my PhD, successfully finished, landed a tenure track position, and in many ways loved it.
Mm.
Um, Loved the academic work, loved going to conferences and talking about how the world could be different. And I did historical research that was really bringing out stories of especially African Americans and women
Mm.
in the American play movement. That was really fascinating work. Um, and I loved teaching. I'd been a teacher for a long time. I loved teaching. What I found was there were a couple of kind of push and pull factors that led me out of academia and into coaching. One of them was I had worked as a stay at home parent and in early childhood education for a couple of decades. And by the time I got to being a professor, I was tired of doing free work for and that was just a reality. And what I found was I was at a teaching university. It was the best fit for me that there could have been. It was a
Mhm.
great, but teaching universities don't pay well. Research ones pay really well, and you don't necessarily teach that much at a research one. So it was this kind of catch 22 of the system.
Yeah.
That was one of the push factors. Another push factor for me was that I really had trouble working with the system of grading
Mm.
and the hierarchies therein. And what happened on the pull side was I started having these really life-giving conversations with students in my office. And in particular, often it was students, our grad students at the university where I was, our undergrads were pretty typically 18-year-old, mostly white, mostly middle class students. Our grad students, because it was a Department of Education with a social
Mhm.
justice focus,
Mm,
were a much wider range.
mm,
And so some of them would come in and be really shocked by the challenge of the work, especially if they'd been at predominantly Black serving institutions that maybe hadn't had the resources that our institution had.
mhm,
And they would start to think of themselves as being not capable.
mm,
And one of the things that was so exciting to me, again, it was sort of the both and. It was really exciting working with the idealistic young white savior teachers and kind of helping them to sort through a lot of that stuff that I'd been through and done. Um, and it was really exciting to work with the grad students in this space of helping them to recognize that systems had not served them well,
mm,
but they were totally capable and the skills were learnable.
mhm,
And so
mm,
those were the things that were lighting me up even more than the teaching, especially
mm,
when teaching got combined with grading and the expectation that you serve on all these committees and write grants, all this stuff that felt a lot like more free labor that I didn't wanna do. And this was, again, at a great institution. I love the institution that I was at.
yeah,
So, I started training as a coach on the side
mm,
while I was a tenure track professor and then ended up, to my own great surprise, deciding that um, I was willing to leave this position and, at the time, my husband wanted to move, and be open to, like, a national move for his next step, and at first I had said, "Absolutely not." Like, "I got a tenure track job? Are you kidding me?" But then I got to that place where I realized, oh, the things I love the most about this job, the
mm,
study, the
mm,
teaching, the writing, I can still do those in other places,
yeah,
potentially for more money. And also, I could have this other piece where I'm helping people who to see who they really are. I'm helping
mm,
them to find their own wisdom.
yeah,
That was so exciting for me as someone who, like all of us, grew up in schools where the teacher knows and you don't know, and you're getting tested for that. This life coaching, which I came to first for myself,
mhm,
um, opened up this whole world where it's the assumption is that you actually have the wisdom inside yourself. Like, that was so exciting to me, and it still is. It's still my favorite part,
yeah,
to be a guide, to be a co-conspirator, to be someone coming alongside,
mm,
and I have a ton of expertise, but it's not knowledge transfer that is the
mhm,
most important part. There are these little moments where there's a need for some knowledge,
yeah,
but it's the drawing out of
mm,
your own wisdom, and I think especially for women and people in marginalized groups, all of us, even the people at the top have been taught not to trust ourselves in a variety of ways, but especially for people in those groups, we have really been taught to distrust,
yeah,
um, our inner knowing, our inner wisdom. We've been taught to distrust emotions. We've been taught to distrust and ignore our bodies, all of those things. So it felt much more like what I really was trying to do as a teacher,
mhm,
um, and that it was richer and more flexible and more exciting to me. So that's how I ended up doing that.
amazing, amazing. What a sort of logical arc, right? And but having worked for so long in this idea of kind of aligning our skills and our interests and our needs with our work and our lives, I think it's so um, enlivening to me when I see people following those threads, right? Because to your point, we have such a strong narrative about success and like doesn't get much better than tenure track, right? That's such
I
a
know.
golden ring. And but to be so self-aware and brave, really, and creative to kind of see the elements of like, okay, this is what I really like, and theory of change. This is what I think really matters. And so I'm going to follow that thread is so important, I think, just as a kind of career path model, apart from getting into the meat of your work, which is, what we'll turn to. Um, I said, we were getting ready. I was saying that last week we talked really like high level about bias as just a psychological phenomena, right? That actually is a shortcut that can be really helpful because when there are 183 versions of toothpaste, it's really important to be like, you know what? I like Sensodyne as a
Mhm.
brand and I hate mint. So I need a different flavor. Like those are biases that help us get through
Right.
the day. Today, obviously, we have a very specific form of bias, which is very problematic to ourselves and other people of racism. And so I have been attracted to your work since we crossed paths on the fabulous universe of Substack,
Mhm.
where I started seeing the title of Controversial Grace. So, talk why grace?
Uh, well, grace is as the way that I work with it, at least. I'm sure there's a million different definitions, but for me, grace is that it's something you don't have to earn.
Mm,
It's already available, and it also is something that leaves space for mistakes and humanity. And I think in the space of racial equity, racial justice work, any kind of social justice work, not just around race, but race is particularly charged,
mm,
especially in the US. Um, there's often not a lot of grace. There's not room to make mistakes. There's um there's not room to have needs, to have like emotions that are messy, all of that. So for me, grace is this container that says, even you, even you, however privileged you are, however many of the multi privileges you have, even you get to be held in grace. And to me, that's what's controversial about it. And it made me really nervous to start saying, part of what I started saying, really only about a year ago, kind of more publicly, is white people get to have grace. Ah! Like, even when I say it, my whole system is like, "No, you're not supposed to say that. You're just supposed to say white people need to do better," which we do. We need to do better, but the path is grace. I mean, it's also connected to the name of my company is Thriving for Equity for a reason,
mm.
because a lot of us do just trying to survive for equity or, um, striving, pushing for equity. But actually, from my experience with clients and I guess probably a greater philosophy of the world,
Mm.
um, the thriving is the path, and it is what we desire for ourselves and for the collective. And for me, grace is essential for that. Grace is an essential container for us to be able to cultivate that kind of thriving.
Yeah. It's making me realize, what that there are always so many subtractions that I realize I'm like another cobweb I want to get out.
Yes.
And listening to your intro and this description as well, I realize I got to study with Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams.
Oh, wow.
Yes, what a privilege. I literally it was a 3-day workshop at Omega. The first
Yes.
day, I broke I passed out and had such
Mm,
a fever that I had to, like, just go lie down in my little cabin for the rest of the afternoon before I could come back
mhm.
to the work. It was so liberating
Yeah,
but in such a, like,
yeah.
powerful way. My body was literally like, "I can't do all this right now."
Whoa, yeah, this is
It was
like
phenomenal.
yeah.
But I mean, there's so much to it, but the piece that I think she's widely quoted for and that definitely sticks as a headline is "No collective liberation without individual change." I'm kind of butchering
Mhm,
that quote, but the idea is individual change first, and I think that's a subtraction is, when we, good-hearted, loving social justice warriors, maybe reformed or not white saviors, right, coming from my own nonprofit background,
mhm,
it's such an other focus, right? Even how can I change the system or how can I serve
mhm.
them or how can I, and actually we're subtracting that outward focus to turn the mirror back on ourselves. And I hadn't totally connected those dots. But do you resonate with that?
Yeah, and I think I would land in the both and of we're subtracting it being only an outward focus. That is the only possibility. Um that and we're adding back in that we get to be in the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. Really cool.
And that we get to be human. We get to have a process. I actually, wrote on Substack about a conversation I had with a Trump supporter who was coming to repair one of my appliances, and, we had a really beautiful conversation, and part of what I noticed in that conversation, and it was something that I had observed externally as well, but he put voice to this. He was like, I don't have a problem with immigrants. I don't have a problem with LGBTQ plus people, or at least he was like LGBT. He's like, but but they just want to force all of this on us right away and not give us any time to and all of us have had to have time to learn. I mean, I grew up really conservative evangelical Christian. I was raised anti-abortion. I was raised anti-lesbian and gay rights. It took me years of I was genuinely asking questions. I was genuinely trying to learn. Then I did the white savior thing, like you mentioned. Like, how many of us who worked in some kind of nonprofit world did the white savior thing and had to learn and had to get better? And there's just a reality to that.
Mm.
There's a reality to that we need time to learn as human beings. The more we learn about trauma, your body was responding, right? Like, this was overwhelming for your system to be learning what you were learning. We need time. And it stinks that we do. Like, I hate it sometimes, like, it stinks that I can't just be perfect at this. And so much of my work, especially with my longer time clients, like one of my longtime clients just came back. He was with me 10 years ago. And we've been doing a lot of work. He's in there. He's in the trenches. He's been in there for 10 years. But especially he's not just white, he's a white man. It's so hard for him to give himself space
Mm.
to make a mistake, to not know what to do, to have a feeling, like to feel hurt about anything. Like, it's like he can't feel hurt about anything. So a lot of what we're doing is working through, like, just making space for those feelings. And yeah, we need to be aware, like white women's tears. We need to be aware that our tears can cause other people to act in violent ways. Like, and also, I mean, part of what drew me to this work is I can't not cry. There's a lot of times when I cannot not cry. If I care, I cry. If I'm feeling a truth arise,
Mhm.
cry in recognition.
Yeah.
So I've had like anti-racism conferences or gatherings that I've gone to, retreats, where I've checked in advance and
Mm.
said, if this is a space where I absolutely can never cry, I should not come. Like, so I need to know, like, I get that. You can have those spaces, but you do not want me in them because I will try really hard, but sometimes I'm going to cry anyway. So some of that is that, like, it's just space for being human.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate, honor, and have learned from so many, mostly Black women. Um, Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams is not one that I've gotten to learn from
Mm.
directly, but is one of those people. Um, Prentice Hemphill, Andrea Renee Johnson is one of my collaborators. People who hold this space of grace
Mm.
for white people and have taught me that I can hold it
Mhm.
also for myself.
Mhm.
And also, it's nice a lot of times when we hold it for each other, which is why I started, so that they don't have to do as much work.
Right.
Like, they did their work with me. Maybe they don't have to do so much. Maybe I can, they can hand some things off to me sometimes. And also, it can be really helpful to us as white people to be in a room where we're not worried that we're gonna cause harm to people of color in the room
Mhm.
in that moment, so we can
Mhm.
actually work through the things that come up.
Yeah.
When you talk about subtracting shame, that's part of what we do in that space, I think. When we're in a space together, we can subtract the shame by bringing it to the surface, like Brené Brown talks about, bringing it into the light. It doesn't stay in the light. It doesn't stay, it dissolves.
Totally.
So,
Totally. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I just every post when I get to read through your pieces, I think they're just such a helpful practice because it has to be a practice, right? All of this is so deep and so generational and so learned that practice of just shining the light, right? Talking about the history, talking about the media dynamics, talking about the workplace dynamics, talking about all of that. It's such a gift. That's why I describe you as generous as a writer of just doing that. I think even just the passive reading of your words and guidance is helping me to
Yeah.
subtract shame and guilt from the racist thing, which I think is a huge gift. Specifically, one piece that really lands with me, it already came up with Kelly last time talking about bias, is this idea of good girl
Mhm.
conditioning. Will you say a little about how you see that playing into the racism?
Yeah, I know I've written I don't know what the title was, but I've written something about letting go of I've written it several places about letting go of trying to be good.
Yeah.
And it's not just girls, but it's extra specially strong for those of us who have been good girls, like really tried to be good girls and still have that like very embedded. So what happens is that we get too focused on trying to be good, trying to be the good white person in this case.
Mhm.
And it actually is a barrier to us actually being quote unquote good, actually being effective, actually being able to show up because the shame gets triggered so fast and the defensiveness gets triggered so fast
Mm.
when we're worried that we're not being seen as good.
Mhm.
Um, and again, I wanna normalize it. I still have this in me. Like, I taught in a prison last semester, and I remember coming home one day and being like, I think they might think I'm just a da 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 like white person, like I'm just like a not street smart and clueless and da da da. Like I wanted the people that I was teaching to think well of me as a white person. Like it is in there. Um, Allie Michael does incredible work, and she's
Mm.
also got a Substack, but she does incredible work around white racial identity.
Mhm.
And I think that gets so interwoven this good girl, I need to be a good girl, or even people of other genders, I need to be a good white person. It gets so interwoven with how we want to be seen.
Mm.
And it ends up making it hard for us to actually show up
Mm.
and try something. It makes it hard for us to show up and have some people of color like what we did and other people of color really not like it, which is going to happen because they're not all the same. Um, there's a lot of nervous system regulation that we need to learn, like actually regulating our bodies, regulating our systems so that we can stay present with ourselves,
Yeah.
regardless of whether somebody else thinks we're a good white person or not. And I do think, like you said, as women who've been trained in the good girl who have it really deeply embedded, it can
Mm.
feel genuinely scary to our
Mhm.
nervous systems,
Mhm.
like and that makes sense. And historically, we did need to make sure that we did not speak up about these things often
Mhm.
in
Mm.
order to protect our own safety. That doesn't necessarily justify it, but it makes it understandable that
Right.
our systems are afraid of
Yeah.
this work, and we want to get being the good girl is what's safe. And so disruption does not feel safe, and that
Yeah.
just makes so much sense. So part of it is, okay, so then when we see that, we can have compassion.
Yeah. 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 It all makes me think of this idea of discomfort, right? Which,
Mm.
is no surprise here, something that you're really inviting people to. And I don't know if you feel this way. I kind of have come to hate this, like, get comfortable with discomfort as like a 21st century platitude about how to change the world. Because I'm like, no, no, discomfort is a signal of something. I think it's data, as you said, that we've been taught to ignore or to fix, right, and get rid of. And so my I don't know, it's not about getting comfortable with it. I hear in some of what you're saying, it's learn to be present with the discomfort.
Yeah,
How do you help clients through
yeah.
that?
I like that distinction, and it makes me think I've been thinking a lot about you did the interview with Nick,
Smith.
about
Yeah.
joy, and
Yes.
and she talked about, joy being kinda like, uh, not associated with comfort,
Mhm.
but actually with discomfort, and I've been thinking about that a lot, and I think it lands here and connects with what you're saying
Mm.
in that we do need to lean into discomfort and stay present with ourselves while we're in the discomfort. That is a skill. It is learnable, even for highly sensitive people, which I would call myself one. Like, we can learn it. Often we haven't been taught. We can learn to stay with this really uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying about, but we don't really wanna get comfortable with it. We wanna listen to it, right? So, what is it telling us?
Mm.
And sometimes what it's telling us, it's like with fear.
Mm.
You don't wanna just completely start ignoring all your fears. That's not wise, right? Fear often has something to tell us. But sometimes it's off,
Mhm.
especially when you talk about racial bias, right?
Mhm.
Like, our systems may have been socialized into feeling of fear of a Black man coming down the street who is not dangerous at all, right? Like, if we actually looked at the situation, we could see there's no sign of danger here,
Mhm.
but so that's a place where our fear is off, our discomfort is not aligned with what is true. We need to pay attention to it and teach our bodies that actually this is a safe place. I'm in a safe
Yeah.
experience.
So workshop something with me because that's so funny. It's timely. I'm on Nantucket, maybe the whitest little piece of land in our country, or certainly one of them, right? But a beautiful, beautiful island with lots of natural beauty and beaches, and a variety of folks, whether international staff for the summer and people of color, and that there is some diversity. So I'm here alone with my 2 dogs walking home last night through the center of town, which is pretty quiet. It's still pretty early season. 9:30 is like might as well be, 5 I don't know what time in New York. Probably there's no time in New York, but it's the dead of night.
Yeah.
Nobody is out. Dinner has long ended. People are home. And so I'm walking the dogs, coming home, and I cross paths with several men alone, men alone. The first was a kid, white kid, who's probably 25, had what I'm guessing maybe is a 12-pack of beers or something, and so in some ways,
Mhm.
like, some privileged, preppy kid taking
Mhm.
refills back to the boys or whatever. But just gender bias, I'm a woman alone, my dogs are Bernedoodles, they don't look super scary, so they don't feel like great defenders. And he really interestingly says, "Good evening," which I don't know, maybe he's just kind of preppy and that's his normal thing, or maybe it was this conscious, really sweet, actually, effort to be like, "I'm not a meathead with beers who's drunk and maybe scary. I'm going to say good
Mhm.
evening, not hey or bury his head," so that's one. Then I pass a guy coming down and I can't, it's pitch black. There's no lights up here. And he's a really big guy with a hood. So, of course, that is a whole other, I don't know his skin color, so very possible he's white because 'cause we're in Nantucket, but I don't know, and he's got the hood, which has become what it's become, and he's huge. I mean, not just like he's a huge guy. So there's that. And I'm watching myself think through all of this. Anyway, and there were 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy on a bike. The girls are kind of out and talking. The boy went behind a house, also has a hood. So I'm just making all these scenarios. As my liberatory life coach, what are you telling me to do with these scenarios? And did I
Mm,
do okay? What do I want to learn from that for the next
mm.
encounters?
Beautiful question. Well, if we were actually working together, we would slow this way down and we would check on sensations in your body. And as you remember these different things, we would check on what you were noticing in your body
Mm,
and we would listen to what those sensations maybe have to say. You might notice an image or a color or a song may come to mind, or you might have a memory that comes to mind. And we would really would be bringing this down out of the brain, out of the not out of the brain, but out of the mind, really into the body and the heart, because that's where we would find what the wisdom is
mm,
specifically for you.
mm,
On a more kind of generic, just responding to this situation, the couple of things that I would say is one, yeah, it makes sense. Like as women, we are on guard all the time because we live in a rape culture. That's what we want to change, right? So I literally just this morning I was walking in the woods on in a place where I generally feel pretty safe, but I went on one of the paths where there's not a lot of people and there was no one else there, and it's a in and out path,
uh-huh,
and there was a white guy there fishing, but I was nervous about walking past him by myself in this space where I knew, like, if he's not a good guy, I cannot get away. And then I decided I'm not giving into fear. I'm going to walk past him. I can look at this situation and say, I think I'm probably fine. But then when I started coming back, he had moved. And I was like, oh my God. And I was thinking of coming home and saying to my husband, just FYI, this is what it's like to be a woman walking on a path, you know? Um, and Similarly, another day when I was on one of these sort of off the beaten path paths and I started hearing someone behind me.
mm.
My husband's on this call and I didn't tell him this, but I started running because I was like, I don't know, but I could run now. It turned out it was him, but I didn't know that until we got to the car. And I chose to tell him that I had run away
He's
from
like, "Honey, are you training for a 5K? I didn't know."
I was like, "I just wanted to run. I just wanted to run the rest of the path." So,
Uh,
all of that to say, there's a reason that there are reasons for this, and also we both were in both of these situations, it sounds like we're both looking at the situation and saying, "Okay, I don't think I'm actually in danger here." Like,
mhm,
if I assess the situation and thought I was actually for real, for sure in danger,
yeah,
I would have turned around immediately. I would have booked it out of like, you know. So I think that's the best we can do
yeah,
in the moment is notice and choose our action based on our best assessment of the situation.
yeah,
And especially if there is, for me, especially if there's race involved, like if
mhm,
it's a black man, I actually lean in the direction of let me assume that he is safe unless I have real clear signals that
right,
he's not, which I have almost never experienced in my life.
yeah,
Because I want to be communicating respect, even
yeah,
if my nervous system has been kind of primed otherwise. But I think the bigger thing is when we find our way to take action about the bigger issue of rape culture, of racist structures and systems and media, when we find our place in that work, that also is part of what comes out of those situations if we let it.
yeah, yeah. It's getting to something that I wanted to ask about separately that I hadn't but this idea of internalized bias being such a real thing, the hoodie, the skin color, the gender, all of that,
Mhm.
which in some cases is based on real data, right? Whether then problematized or not. And then on the other hand, inner wisdom, which I think can sound the same in my head or in my body.
Well, yeah, and we don't necessarily know. Sometimes we're gonna make the wrong choice, you know? Um, and I just feel the need to say I'm so angry that young boys who like to wear their hoods up get demonized. Like, it's very I really want us to change that as a society. Um, I I think we learn by practice and we learn by making mistakes
Mm,
to distinguish between the 2. Um, and maybe there's more than 2, it may be, but I think we have to do that in community.
mhm,
Part of part of the reason to gather people around yourself
mm,
who will challenge you, who have different perspectives, who will also hold space for your learning, is so that we can process through these kinds of questions
mm,
and say, like, I mean, I had a consult recently where somebody did a one-off consultation with me to process how she had reacted to an African American couple coming into the grocery store in her predominantly white community. And she was horrified by her reaction because she turned the corner and, like, was shocked and, like, visibly shocked, and then she, like, tried really hard to be really extra nice the next time, and then she felt stupid. Like, yeah, we know what you and I know what this is like. We know it could have been us, right? Like, and so we work through that with each other,
mm,
so that we can sort through, um, okay, what was actually happening?
mm,
What do I wanna do with that? What do I wanna do differently next time? Is there an action for me to take or is there not? Sometimes there is an action for us to take and sometimes there isn't. And often we jump into the action because that relieves the angst, right? But in this case, basically what we got to is, well, yeah, you're shocked because this is so starting with that compassion and forgiving herself and then calming herself. And then also, she got to practice for her system. If this happens again,
oh,
what do I want my reaction to be? And you can practice. You can, Dr. Amanda Kemp, who now goes by Aminata Soul Plant Walker Firewoman, she has a beautiful course on decreasing our inherent bias, and a lot of it is practice.
mhm,
It's look at your walls. Who are in the images on your walls?
uh-huh,
You can change that, and it will start to change your biases.
fascinating.
You can change the music that you're listening to, the podcasts in your podcast feed, the people on your Instagram, the books that you read, and it will change your unconscious biases. You can give yourself new information that
Mm,
will change you from the inside out as
mm,
well.
yeah,
So I think it's both of those things. It's taking
yeah,
active steps to also show up in a different community where you're not the predominant one if you live in a predominantly white community.
mhm,
Um, so it's the
mm,
community outside, but it's also what are you feeding yourself to
yeah,
combat the stuff that you can't help that's
right,
been coming at you.
right.
Does
Gosh,
that answer
that
your
feels
question?
yeah, that feels so important. I was gonna kind of as we get close to the top of the hour, shift to what are some of the tactics, right? Short, but until everyone has the chance to work with you and to read your
Mhm,
Substack cover to cover, what are some of the tactics? And I think that's and with some tough love, because I think
mhm.
it is easy to not do the hard things of seeing different movies or streaming because we're gonna be fed things that look and sound like us, you know? So
Mhm.
what other kind of tough love nudges would you give us?
Yeah, well, that's definitely one of the first ones I would give, and I'll just say, I just finished the book The Henna Artist. It's a fabulous novel. It's set in India in the 1950s. Um, I recommend it if somebody wants to start with something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that that would be one of my number one recommendations is, choose what you're feeding yourself intentionally. There's all different places you can do this. You've talked about this in your work. Choose where you're spending your money.
Mm,
If you have choices, if you have enough money that you can make choices, choose who gets it, like, intentionally, even if it's somewhat inconvenient. There's a wonderful organization, that it's called I don't remember the name of the organization, but the project is called The Next Egg,
mm,
and their goal is to move retirement funds, like millions and billions of retirement funds, out of these investing in these extractive companies that make a lot of money for people,
yeah.
but into things that actually feed back to communities. It's a huge vision, right?
Wow.
But people who have a lot of wealth
Mm,
and a lot of choice can choose to invest their retirement funds differently.
yeah.
That's another way to
Mm,
start, and it will start to shift your focus, about what you're noticing as wealth, what you're noticing about what's going on when you do these community focused investments. You get to
mm,
hear about what's actually happening,
mm,
and potentially become part of that.
yeah.
Um, Doing it right where you are. Wherever you are, there is someone in your realm who is less privileged and more marginalized than you. Just start there. Start learning what you can about their experience. Start
Mm,
being aware of what challenges people are facing who are not able-bodied if you're able-bodied. Like there's kind of a million different places you can start. It's like
yeah.
just don't get frozen, start
Right.
and collect people around you who will support you, give you grace,
Yeah.
um, and give you challenge.
Yeah.
Like you said, that's why on Controversial Grace, I do a feel better post and a do better post. They're really both the same thing, but
Mm,
but we have to kind of lean in both of those directions.
yeah. Yeah. And you touched on it, so I just wanna pick it out as we close. You know, there are a lot of, some great men that I know of in this space. Your husband, I'm so glad he's here, and Richard, I can't wait to talk to you about this when we have lunch next week, or in 2 weeks, and Garrett does so much of his own work in this space too. So, great audience
Mhm,
of men, hallelujah, and we know a
mhm,
ton of women. We see you all out there too as our normal audience, and the money point, I do
mhm,
think is so juicy, and you talk about this in your reason for being of Controversial
mhm,
Grace, in your very first anchor post where everyone
mhm,
will start when they subscribe as soon as we wrap here, is about this wealth transfer, and
mhm.
that $82 billion, I believe, is shifting to the control of women in, like, the next, like, 8 or 10 years, like,
Yeah,
now. Oh, and a lot of it already has through
yeah,
inheritance, through earnership
yeah,
as women have risen in the ranks, and through marriage, of course. And so what about that
yeah.
to bring home why this work is so timely and important that you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, we could have a whole 'nother podcast about this,
Or
but
2.
yes, that was one of the other things that really excited me about focusing on working with women is that there is this wealth transfer coming, and we have data that says that when women, have wealth, women tend to invest it back into community,
Yeah.
right? But if we're stuck, and a lot of us who good girl, middle and upper class, especially if those of us who have had times or predominant mostly our wealth has come from marriage or
Mm,
inheritance or someone else working or um I think that got me particularly excited in thinking about inherited wealth or people who have wealth because their spouse worked because it comes partly from my own experience of having been a stay-at-home mom some of the time. I was raised by a stay-at-home mom, um, and watching how easily we can give up our power.
Mhm.
Um, and so I see this wealth transfer as being a really exciting time, and could be a missed opportunity. Like if we don't deal with the internalized pieces that could have us just continuing the status quo,
Yeah.
we'll miss this amazing opportunity. But if we choose to harness the power of this amazing opportunity, and there are more and more men, I'm seeing more and more men showing up, who are more than happy and excited to come alongside and to engage in this kind of community investment, and creating new economies, beloved economies, like there's so much yucky stuff happening right now with a few people in power who are not about that, but this is a huge shift that's coming. So I just think it's really exciting, and I'm like, let's do our work.
Totally, totally. And in true subtraction session fashion, we have to close with, on one hand, so I mean, just truth, there is so much opportunity and so much to do.
Mhm,
And as you know well, in my opinion, it's really important to stop doing things as much as to
mhm,
start doing new things because all of
mhm,
us tend to be working so hard and so overwhelmed already. What would be your favorite subtraction? If you had a subtraction wand for all of the women
mhm.
and men out there listening to help get rid of racial bias that is so unhelpful, what would the subtraction be?
The first thing that comes to mind is subtract harsh self-criticism. It takes a lot of energy to be hating on yourself. We can use that elsewhere.
Yeah. Deb, what a treat. Thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank you for your
you.
work. Episode 2 will be the green episode on trees and money.
Yes. Oh, that will be so much fun.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All
Keep
right.
up the good
Thanks,
work.
Nell. Thanks everybody for
Thanks
coming.
everyone for being here. Ciao, ciao.